Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us, Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase pricing and availability questions concerning this watch. Today, we're discussing a 2024 launch, the debut model from a new brand, Albishorn. Their tagline, Imaginary History. So we would not have had a modern format regatta timer back on Lake Geneva in 1939, but if such a thing had existed, this is what it would look like. Now, in terms of imaginary history, Panerai is still the world champion, but what's fun about this watch is that it openly contrives history that never was. So, it's also a collaboration with William Massena, who is an incredibly refined and thoughtful aesthetic judge and connoisseur of modern watches. So, this watch right here is a collaboration between Massena Lab and Albishorn, and Albishorn is the brand run by Sebastian Cholmontet, famous for his job in product development with Arnold & Son, La Joux-Perret, and Angelus, later of Sellita, a role where he is still active, and then this is a brand of watches he's building effectively under his own direction. So given free rein to make his own watch and not one for the company, this is what results. It is, of course, a watch with an extended name, just as it has extended parentage. It is the Albishorn Massena Lab Maxigraph. But don't be fooled, although maxi, and yes, a chronograph, it's not gigantic. 39 millimeters is the size of the steel case if we're just measuring at the mid case. If we're measuring it at the edge of the bezel, then it's 41. In terms of thickness, 13.4. In terms of lug-to-lug, 48.1 end-to-end with a 20 millimeter spacing between the lugs. We're going to take a look at this watch on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference. And I would say if you're familiar with the capsule collection or the regular production Breitling Super Ocean Heritage 57, this wears very similar to that. I would say a wrist as small as 14 centimeters circumference can wear this, and although it does have a little bit of flare and cantilever to the bezel, it should fit underneath most cuffs. Could this be your dress watch? Absolutely. Is it a sports watch first and foremost? Yes, you better believe it. And to that end, it has another imaginary article of history. What if the tropic straps of the 1960s and 70s were made out of red rubber? Well, it might look like this. There's a lovely basket weave pattern. There's a little boundary of serrations to give it some definition. On the underside, hollows and perforations to allow breathing of the wrist on a hot day. We've got a simple polished and satin finished buckle that also includes a little bit of media blast for good measure and the Albishorn logo. Taking a look at the case, one element that really ties it to historic timepieces is it has a thin mid case, which is almost universally a feature of older watches. Big, thick tuna style can cases, those came about in the 90s and later. So here we have a very fine and thin mid case, though you can see that we also have a little bit of a expanding bevel, which is more of a modern design cue. We also have this sort of ducktail undertuck squared off facet, so little inverse ducktail squared off facet below that has been satin finished, and that gives it a little bit more vintage vibe. The mono pusher for the chronograph is located where it's most easily accessed, that is the thumb position. So whether you're using it as a stopwatch in the hand or you're using it on the wrist, this is going to be very easy to actuate. Although the watch has a push-down crown, it is 100 meters water resistant. You can see we have a bidirectional rotating bezel with a little red triangular index, which feels very true to history. Note that it has both a count-up timer calibrated in minutes and a count-up timer calibrated in hours. So pick your hand and be mindful of the scale. It also has a wonderfully dished profile with polish outboard and then a satination in concentric fashion around its interface. The crystal is a sapphire, but it's designed to look like a vintage plexi, and it does achieve a little bit of that off-axis distortion. Taking a look at the dial, you can see it's a combination of matte and metallic finishes. We also have a number of colors. We have black, we have red, we have blue, we have green, and there is no shortage of luminescence. So there's what you might easily anticipate, the two kite-style hands, but then look to the left and the right of the dial in the dark. You can see the individual scales of 6 hours have been calibrated so you can read them even in the dark. And note that the hands are of differential colors, so you can tell them apart at a glance. You don't have to guess which one is shorter. Blue is minutes and green is hours. The dial features a very modern style of regatta timer. So we have center seconds on a lovely red varnished hand, and then we have a countdown timer. So what's going to happen is it's going to start at 10, it's going to end at 0. 10 and 5-minute increments are particularly important if you are engaged in a regatta. So a series of sailboat races, the individual races are called matches, and it's very important to synchronize your yacht starting the race with the end of the countdown period. So that's why regatta timers as a genre are countdown watches. When it reaches the end of the scale, the seconds hand continues running, although the hand is not a retrograde. It will not return to the beginning of its scale. So you know for good that 10 minutes, 5 minutes is over. The timepiece also features an interesting multicolor running indicator. Because it's a mono pusher, as soon as you stop it, you have to reset it. But you could see that there are several different colors. I'll demonstrate this. Several different colors used on the running indicator. So once you're more familiar with the watch, you'll understand how the running indicator works. You can see I can stop it there, but it allows me to see that the watch is in operation. So it's not so much a chronograph on-off function as it is a sign that your watch is in operation. Consider it similar to the running indication on some JLC dive watches from the 2000s. Okay, on the reverse side. Back in 1939 on Lac Le Mans, also known as Lake Geneva, there was Le Bol d'Or, which was the first organized regatta taking place between elite class yachts. And this is a 6-meter design, so the 6-meter William IV, or Helium 4. You can see it's a nice, beautiful full keel design with long overhangs and a Bermuda sloop rig. Really cool case back, and underneath that you can see we have Massena Lab and Albishorn both involved. Although they haven't declared what kind of movement is inside this, I would be utterly shocked if it isn't some variation of the Sellita SW500, which is Sellita's version of the ageless Valjoux 7750, since Charles Montet, the proprietor of the brand, still works for Sellita in a development role. This is almost certainly an SW500 on the inside. Taking one last quick look at the reverse side, you can see that we have pull tab bars that allow you to quickly remove the strap without a tool. And the watch does come with an accessory strap, which is in calfskin and white leather. So that's quite attractive, and you can swap out just by pulling the tab. The movement itself is a unidirectional winder, automatic winding. It's got a 64-hour power reserve, stop seconds function, a 4 hertz beat rate, and pivots on 25 joules. And it has a complications module added to the top for the operation indicator, as well as the mono pusher function and the countdown. And because it is based on a 7750 architecture, it's a combination of, I believe this application has I want to say it's a column wheel conversion. But what I know for sure is that it's definitely an oscillating pinion clutch, which means that it has a very fine lateral clutch. An oscillating pinion has very little play inherent. So when you start up an oscillating pinion clutch, you press and you hold, and it's often as seamless as a vertical clutch because the pinion driving the center wheel has a very fine-toothed profile. And this is something you're seeing more and more on ultra-high-end chronographs from de Bethune, from Richard Mille, from FP Journe. But the 7750 architecture on which the SW500 is based, that has always had that feature. If you love this watch, reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.